Well, they got it done, and it looks like all systems are go for the Spagnuolo defense in Kansas City. We're going to talk about who the Chiefs coaching staff on the defense is right now. Welcome back to Locked On Chiefs. It's another week, and I was supposed to be talking about Eric Berry. I've got a video planned to talk about the decision and what the future looks like for Eric Berry in Kansas City, but the Chiefs went through a little monkey wrench in my plan, and they went and announced, finally, their defensive staff is done. It's complete. So what we found out this week is that they have made all their hires. The Spagnuolo staff is together. They are one unit. And we're going to go through and see what it means, see who's where, and what we can take away from that as they get ready for the tag and free agency and the draft, looking at the 2019 Chiefs defense. Now, if you're new around here, I'm Ryan, and this is my channel, Ryan Going Rogue. I appreciate you guys checking it out. And for all you subscribers, thanks for coming back. I appreciate it. If you are new, hit the subscribe, the bell notification, leave your comment, and give me a thumbs up if you like what I'm doing. And just before I get started, I want to say a huge thank you to all the subscribers and everyone that's checked out the channel. This is video number 100. We're at 7,000 subscribers, 100 videos in, and it's been a lot of fun. Thank you for all of your time watching. It's been fun to do them. And I have a few wrinkles coming at you in this next season. Now, it's been a few weeks since Steve Spagnuolo was hired, and we read between the tea leaves that this is going to become a 4-3 defense. That official statement has not been made yet, just by announcing the staff. But we do know who that staff's going to be. And it's been a bit of a time coming. They did have a couple of hiccups, and we're going to talk about that when the certain position coaches come up here. But the great thing is that as the day opens where they can place a tag, and they have a full staff, and that helps them make the decisions that they have to make because of all the things that we've been talking about the last 2 weeks on the Locked On Chiefs podcast. Make sure you subscribe to that if you're not already. As well as on here, these decisions have to be made based on film and based on how they fit with what the future is going to be under Steve Spagnuolo. And what Spagnuolo really wants is a group of coaches that can teach, that can make that transition happen, because there are some serious players at some serious positions that have to make a transition. And optimizing that is really going to be the key to making this defense take that step forward in 2019 that they have to have in order to get to that Super Bowl. So, we're going to go through them one by one. Let's start with Brendan Daly, who has come onto the Chiefs staff to coach the defensive line. This is a pretty good get for the Chiefs because he is easily the biggest name in terms of transferring, being hired away from another NFL franchise. He has been, for the last 3-4 seasons, the defensive line coach for the New England Patriots. And that is a unit that we've seen, though not really heralded coming out of the draft, not really sure how they fit into schemes and whatnot. He has developed them into a unit that's very diverse, that can play a lot of varied fronts and do what they need to do to get wins. Very, very pliable in terms of what they do against the blitz, their stunt packages. I think they're, honestly, as athletes, they're underrated in New England, that particular unit. And he's been kind of the mastermind behind that. There's going to be some question marks about just what the influence of Bill Belichick was and whether the credit really goes to Daly. But everything that I'm hearing from coaches around the league is that he's got a great reputation and is a guy that is going to get the most out of the athletes he has along the defensive front. Steve Spagnuolo chose well. Andy Reid, I'm sure, helped with that. And they did have to give him a little bump. He's the defensive line coach and the run game coordinator, which is usually an offensive title. But there are rules in the NFL when you hire away coaches from other teams about giving them a title that is a little bit more than it needed to be, rather than just a lateral move. So, look at that. He's going to concentrate on the run game. And I think that's a nice omen because, like Gunther used to say, you have to take away the run to take away a team's will. And I think that's definitely something that needs to be focused on, as we saw what New England did to the Chiefs last season. This run game and the run defense along the defensive front is going to be really, really critical. So I'm going to take that as a nice hire, and that's something that this team can take what they've been good at in the defensive front and build on. Now, the most highly publicized hiring is Matt House, who was the D coordinator at Kentucky, a guy that has a really, really good reputation amongst college coaches as being an up-and-comer, a guy that could maybe ascend to a head coaching job eventually. I think in jumping to the NFL, what he's doing is putting teams on notice that he is going to be a coordinator candidate at the NFL level eventually, and we'll worry about head coach down the line. Some keys. Started out with Spagnuolo, has worked for him in the past, has coached inside linebackers in particular for quite a long time. I think he's the perfect guy to come in and take over that role with what was probably the weakest link on the Chiefs' 2018 defense. And honestly, they're the guys that have the biggest hurdle in moving to the Spagnuolo defense. A lot of changes at all the linebacker positions. The lines and secondary, they're going to do what they do. There'll be some differences, but their roles are very similar. The linebackers are going to have to change across the board. And I think he's a great guy to get in there because a young coach with a lot of fire and a lot of success, look for them to maybe even lean on some of his old players as the Kentucky defenders come up in the draft this coming season. Now, the other interesting thing, and I told you guys this on the podcast weeks and weeks ago, is that Britt Reid is still on the staff, and he's not the assistant to the defensive line coach. He is now moving on to coach the outside linebackers and will be the assistant to Matt House. I think this is a normal progression. I thought what he did with the defensive line has been very good, got the most out of them as athletes, and I think moving on to this aspect where the outside linebackers have to play new roles, they really have the biggest change because I think Anthony Hitchens is probably going to be your starter at middle, maybe with Reggie Ragland mixed in there, definitely for depth. But those guys are going to have similar roles even from the 3-4. It's the outside linebackers that are going to have to do things completely differently. And I think that having that continuum of a guy that's been on the staff, has done well in his former position group, I think that bodes well. And I think Britt Reid is a guy that is adaptable and it clearly can coach at this level. And that brings us to the new coaches in the Chiefs secondary. And it's a bit of a yin and a yang here. Much like the Chiefs' former staff, with Emmett Thomas, a Hall of Famer, obviously an older coach who I think he'd been coaching almost 40 years, paired with Al Harris, a very, very aggressive player, a guy that I really liked as a player, but didn't have a lot of coaching experience before he came to Kansas City. And so you kind of pair those guys to work together. I still feel like it was a mistake to let Al Harris go, but we'll see what happens. The guys they have brought in have their own resumes and I think are very interesting and very similar to what we saw before. What we're going to see is the secondary coach, the guy that'll probably coach the safeties, is Dave Merritt. A guy that has coached in New York for quite a long time, going on 15 years, has coached for Spagnuolo before, very familiar with the system and should step in day one and be ready to go. He spent last season coaching for Steve Wilks as the secondary coach in Arizona. And we talked about Steve Wilks in the offseason as a DC candidate in Kansas City because of his aggression, because of his ability to get the most out of his secondary. I think Dave Merritt's a lot to do with that, and this is a really nice get for fitting into the Spagnuolo system. And for those of you that want to know about rumors, Dave Merritt coached Landon Collins all the years he was there when he first came in the league, and last season helped to keep the Fountain of Youth running for Patrick Peterson in Arizona. So those are a couple of nice free agent ties. We'll talk more about what happens in free agency in the next couple of videos. Now, the other secondary coach that they're going to pair with him is very similar, like I said, to Al Harris, because Harris didn't have a lot of coaching experience. Well, Sam Madison doesn't either. He's coached some in high school from what I've found, but not a lot of experience outside of that. Hasn't coached in the NFL before, but he has been a very successful corner in the NFL. Played up through the end of his career in the last few seasons, I think it was 3, he played for Spagnuolo and Merritt in New York. Again, very familiar with the system, very familiar with the techniques that Spags wants to get from his corners. He's going to have a tall order. We don't even know who he's going to be coaching yet because I expect a lot of turnover in the cornerback group. But he is a guy that played very successfly. 130 PBUs, 38 interceptions in his career. For those of you that remember, and I'll talk about this on the podcast as well, he was the other half of the tandem that Pat Surtain came from when he came to the Chiefs back in the day. So there's a lot of ties there. And I think despite not having a lot of coaching experiences, particularly at the professional level, he's a guy that's been there and done that, and he can point to his career in a very meaningful way for these young guys playing in this system for this defensive coordinator. So I look for that to be a good pairing as well. And he and Merritt together, I think, are going to be a nice team. So in the secondary, I think they're going to be all right. It's going to be really interesting to see how they come together. And lastly, real quick, I don't want to leave them out, but I think it's really cool that they took some young coaches that they've had on staff and kept them. Britt Reid is not the only survivor. And that's important because much like you see with the Andy Reid coaching tree, you want to have a tree on the defensive side as well. This is an opportunity to really start the franchise over on the defensive side in a way that really hasn't been seen since Gunther was the defensive coordinator. So Terry Braden and Alex Whittingham, two young coaches that have been on the staff that are going to continue. And they're at low-level coaching spots, but look for them to be guys that can move up. The Chiefs kept them for a reason. I think that's a lot of Andy Reid's influence, but Spagnuolo will definitely shape their careers. I'm excited to see what happens with them, and I think it bodes well for the Chiefs' future on the defensive side of the ball. So that's where I see it. Thanks for watching episode number 100 on the channel. Very excited about that. You guys have been great. Tell your friends, spread the word. We want to grow this even bigger for the next 100 shows. I appreciate all of your time. Thank you for watching me today, and I'll see you next time.